Hey guys, what's up? Sando here, and today I'll be testing an all-tube headphone amplifier made by xDuoo that is called TA-26 that goes for a little over $300. Now, I have already tested some of their hybrid amplifiers like TA-10R, like TA-30 that had transistors at the input stage and vacuum tubes at the output stage, but with this one you'll be getting the full vacuum tube experience without breaking the bank. Okay guys, so let's check how it looks, what's inside it, and then how it sounds. Let's go! When it comes to looks, it will not win a beauty contest anytime soon, thanks to its Spartan look, but it will surely resist a lot of use and abuse thanks to its full metal build. There isn't a single piece of plastic on this one, only aluminum, steel, 4 rubber feet, 2 tubes, and that's pretty much it. It has a gray finish, matte gray finish, and the cherry on top is of course that red volume knob that stands out and makes it in line with the rest of their lineup. They removed tiny displays and buttons for a minimalist look that wouldn't bother you in late night listening sessions. As for controls, you can see an on-off switch on its front panel, a 1/4-inch headphone jack, and of course a big volume knob to its right. On its back you'll find a single pair of RCA inputs and another pair of RCA outputs, just in case you'll use it as a preamp in a loudspeaker setup for some tube goodness. As for tech inside it, we are looking at a very simple all-tube headphone amplifier that uses a big 6N 5P tube buffer and a smaller one 6N 8P double triode. Of course, you can tube roll these ones, especially if you want a little bit more sweetness, more warmth, and for that I do recommend you some new all stock tubes that will be giving you exactly that. It's a single-ended only amplifier that can pump around 500 milliwatts in 600 ohms, and since this is an OTL amplifier, it means that it will work great only with higher impedance headphones. They do recommend headphones ranging in between 60 and 600 ohms, meaning that low impedance and low sensitivity planar magnetics, wouldn't work that great with this one. It uses audio-grade coupling capacitors and a big transformer outside its case, away from sensitive electronics for a lower noise and magnetic leakage. This is pretty much it, and I believe is the right time for some sound impressions. Sound-wise, I will start with the things that weren't that impressive to me, and then we'll move to the good parts. Now, if you understand the limitations of OTL amplifiers like this one, then these aren't really bad things, just, limitations of set designs. So, first of all, you should understand that such amplifiers will not work with low impedance, low sensitivity headphones, meaning that most of my planar magnetic headphones didn't work that well with this one. With the exception of the Odyssey LCD4 that has 200 ohms, still past 1 o'clock position it started distorting, it started clipping, meaning that it cannot provide the amount of current that LCD4 are craving for. However, with something like HD800S, I presume that with Biodynamic T1 and with higher impedance headphones, it was a very different story altogether. It sounded really amazing with the HD800S, even better compared to a lot of solid-state amplifiers in the same price bracket. They become bigger sounding, they become more natural sounding, so it was a very different headphone compared to what I know about them connected to, say, a topping amplifier or maybe a SMSL amplifier. So if you understand the limitations of such amplifiers, I believe that they can still work quite outstanding. Problem number 2 is that it will not work with sensitive IEMs, with low impedance sensitive IEMs, because it will show a little bit of noise floor, a higher noise floor, a little bit of hum, of hiss. And again, if you can pass those limitations, those two, the noise floor with low impedance headphones, and of course the amount of current that cannot be delivered to planar magnetic headphones, then I believe this is still an amazing sounding amplifier. Moving on to the good parts, TA-26 will charm you with its amazing flow, so everything just flows naturally like a river. with its amazing soundstage, with its very nice imaging, so everything is located very precisely somewhere around you. Everything is decompressed, so it sounds really big, bigger compared to solid-state amplifiers from Topping, from SMSL. So in this regard, this is quite an impressive amplifier. And of course, it sounds natural. It has natural timbres. It tries to relax you, especially after a hard day at work. It doesn't really pump crazy dynamics, crazy transients. It doesn't hammer you down when it comes to, landing some precise bass hits. It doesn't provide you the last drop of information in terms of detailed retrieval, but it just works very well with something like HD800S. And again, I presume that Biodynamic T1 and other higher impedance headphones will work pretty much the same. All in all, it's a well-balanced amplifier, so it's neither too smooth, neither too slow sounding, polite sounding, but also not brash, not harsh sounding at all. I believe that it tries stealing some traits from solid-state amplifiers, because it doesn't really sound like an old-school, old-tube amplifier like Little Dot, like Dark Voice, because it's never really overly slow or mellow sounding. Moving on to noise floor, this will be a much shorter story, because it wasn't really designed for ultra-sensitive loads as IEMs, as earphones. It doesn't have a gain switch, meaning that you'll be getting a little bit of hiss, a little bit of hum passing by, regardless of the volume that you are listening to, even at the lowest position. However, the voice coil inside your high impedance headphones is working more like a filter to that noise, to that hum, meaning that higher you are going with that impedance, you are getting less and less noise. For example, with the Odyssey LCD4 that have 200 ohms, I'm not getting anything, so it was completely dead silent. With HD800S, it's pretty much the same, so it's a dead silent amplifier. I'm not getting anything. So if you are staying away from ultra-sensitive IEMs, from sensitive desktop headphones like Focals, then it will perform simply as a dead silent amplifier, and that is everything you need to know. And the same can be said about its transient response. So if you are not choking it down with some low sensitivity planar magnetic headphones with some high dynamic range tracks, then it will be providing you a really nice transient response, so some impressive dynamics. I was actually quite surprised how well it was able to sustain longer bass notes, so providing a higher enjoyment factor with my electronica tunes. Usually all tube amplifiers like this one and electronica music don't go that well together, but this is a small exception from that rule. It was providing higher quantities of bass compared to the usual solid-state amplifiers in the same price bracket that I started headbanging on Perceiving All by Symbolico. So this unit is a little more impressive when landing the last hit, the last kick on your eardrums, and a little less when accelerating and decelerating those notes. So forget about a lightning fast delivery of your music, so it's not really super fast. It cannot keep up with some hybrid or solid-state amplifiers in this regard, but it will surely impress when bass notes will be landing on your eardrums. Moving on to power output, it was able to drive all my dynamic driver headphones like HD800S, Kennerton Valley, RZH Mania, Apos Caspian, but it was struggling with all my planar magnetic headphones with no exceptions. So it was distorting and clipping, especially with bass intensive music, when I was going past its 1-2 o'clock position volume wise, so it was not able to deliver the amount of current that those headphones are craving for, but it worked really well with all my dynamic headphones. So this is not really an overpowerful amplifier, but more like a specialist amplifier that should be used only with high impedance dynamic driver headphones. So if you own any AKG, Sennheiser, Biodynamic or ZMF headphones, I believe that it should work really nice with all of them, including with HD800S, Tesla One, and many others. When it comes to soundstage, when it comes to imaging, this thing delivers an almost speaker-like experience with HD800S, and I'm pretty sure that with Tesla One it will sound pretty much the same. So it sounds bigger, it sounds more layered, it sounds wider, more spacious compared to solid-state amplifiers. in the same price bracket. It sounded even bigger compared to units that were 10 times the price of TA-26, if those were solid-state amplifiers. So if your headphones are fully driven by this unit, that's a very important aspect, then you should expect really an out-of-head experience, a sound that goes past your shoulder levels, providing a very precise imaging. It sounded really amazing with open back headphones, almost like listening to a near-field stereo setup, so that was very apparent from the start. You are surely interested in an amplifier like this for this reason alone. If you want, a bigger sound compared to solid-state amplifiers without breaking a bank, I believe that TA-26 is exactly that unit. No matter what I was listening for it was always trying to put a little bit more air in between those notes. It was trying to push everything outside my head, like looking at the bigger picture. Even with, cozy jazz, even with cozy blues, it was trying to sound bigger than life. This part alone is quite impressive. This is one of the strongest points of TA-26. It's almost pointless discussing about detailed retrieval with an OTL amplifier, especially with an entry-level OTL amplifier like this one. So while I cannot call it muddy or veiled sounding, it was not like that at all, but it was not trying to steal my attention with, overly clean, overly sharp, overly detailed presentation like those THX and NFC amplifiers would do. So it doesn't have an impeccable detailed retrieval because, it tries to round my music a little bit. It makes it a little softer, smoother sounding. The rough edges are somehow polished. So it's more like focusing on the innards, on your music, on everything that's inside it, on the texture, and not on the leading edges, on their outside, on the sharpness, on their contours. It's more about the act of music listening with this one than about, searching for a needle in a haystack. It's not bad in here, so again, it's not veiled, it's not muddy sounding, but it will not impress a detailed retrieval freak. On the plus side, it's quite transparent sounding, so it was pretty easily focusing on the things playing in the background, like on that drummer, on percussion work. So in the end, we're getting a transparent sounding amplifier and an above average detailed retrieval. Moving on to the frequency response, I was surprised that TA-26 was not trying to interfere in here too much, how my older WAudio WA6 Special Edition was doing. So it was not trying to roll off the frequency extremes, and by that I mean the sub bass and upper treble. Still, two things were standing out quite often, that is bass quantity and of course a higher mid-range delivery. It was putting a substantial amount of bass quantity on the table. It wasn't really the cleanest bass out there, but it was that fat, full-bodied, that heavy-duty bass that helped HD800 more than other amplifiers were doing. It has some traces of lushness and of warmth, but I wouldn't call it as overly warm sounding, overly dense sounding in the mid-range. It's more like a modern interpretation of OTL-based amplifiers, so it's more technical sounding in the mid-range compared to older little dot or dark voice amplifiers. Still, if you want a little bit more warmth, if you want more emotion from your music, you can certainly do that. You can do that with new old stock tubes that will be giving you exactly that. The stock ones are inputting a higher accent on the mid-range delivery, on the vocal performance, but I cannot deny its natural sounding mid-range. Its treble is quite relaxed, but extended and defined sounding in here, that is for sure. So it's clean sounding for the most part, yet there aren't really traces of digitals, of brightness in here. That over sharpness that might bother you with THX and NFCA amplifiers, solid-state amplifiers, cannot be found in here. So its top end is clean, but it's certainly softer and more relaxed sounding compared to said amplifiers, making it a breeze listening to treble intensive tracks on this one. Sennheiser HD800S are quite powerful in this department, so put them on the wrong amplifier and you can definitely clench your teeth, but that's a long forgotten dream on the xDuoo TA-26. In a nutshell, TA-26 is not the most powerful, the cleanest, the most revealing amplifier out there, but it will surely shine a very different light on your music, making it sweeter, making it more colorful, more saturated, more relaxed sounding in a way. So with an amplifier like this, I want to listen to music for hours and hours, and I still want a little bit more. So yes, this is not the most technical sounding amplifier out there, but it will surely add more bass and mid-range density while trying to decompress my music as much as possible. So you can pair it up with any portable and desktop DAC, because I believe that system matching is really a non-issue with this amplifier. I'm going to recommend it only for high impedance dynamic headphones. Otherwise, stick to hybrid or solid state amplifiers with your planar magnetic headphones. This is highly recommended for high impedance dynamic headphones. Okay folks, this is pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed my review. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as usual, listen to my tunes. Be positive, and I'll see you around.